From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya! On episode 57, we are talking about science fiction film Spacesweepers. It came out early this year, 2021, and in this episode we will reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of the narrative and film language, plus a deep dive into a specific piece of science that the filmmakers are proposing. Spacesweepers 2021 was directed and written by Jo Sung-hee.
Turn back now, unless you want us to spoil everything for you. Go watch the film, tune back in, and listen to us tell you how great it was, I suppose.
You suppose, yeah. Well, I hope that's you're expecting us to do the next 2 hours. Sorry.
Sometimes I feel a bit wishy-washy in my presentation.
You're not too sure about the great or the good or the fantastical of this science fiction film.
We can find out. Actually, there's a couple of things I really liked about this film.
Yeah, there's a lot, actually. But anyway, there's your warning. So, Spacesweepers is set in the year 2092 and follows the crew of a space junk collector ship called the Victory. When they discovered a humanoid robot named Dorothy that is known to be a weapon of mass destruction, little nod to George W. Bush, president, they get involved in a risky business deal.
I didn't think of that connection.
No, I just thought of it then. Weapons of mass destruction. Remember the weapons of mass destruction?
And we have warned people about spoilers to realise then that, as happened with Desert Storm...
Yes.
There were no weapons of mass destruction.
It was a trick, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was a trick.
Yeah.
So there we go.
What was your number one takeaway from Spacesweepers? Sorry?
Oh, my number one takeaway from Spacesweepers is that Korean science fiction is in some ways several steps ahead of Western science fiction in terms of social development.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's what I picked up.
And what do you mean by that, social development? What does that mean to you?
This wonderful robot character.
Yeah. Buddy,
yeah.
Robot,
yes. Operates as a robot.
Yeah.
And it picks stuff up and it fights and it's,
and it can do things as a robot.
It's a roboty robot. Yeah. And my social lens puts over this, those are masculine things.
Yes.
When in this movie... this robot self-determines a feminine persona by the end.
Even though it has a male robotic voice. Yeah, yes. So it's a bit of a... Yeah.
So it's just kind of... And I really liked that because it made me question myself. Why did I assume that this robot was masculine?
Good point.
Why did I even assign gender to a robot? And that's what I mean is this Korean fellow Joe...
Yeah.
Joe, if that's how you pronounce your name, probably good enough for me because I can't say anything in Korean. No doubt Joe can
I've been very bad, so I deliberately did the pronunciation of this one, and it is Jo Sung-hee.
Probably, Jo Sung-hee.
That's what Google pronunciation told me. I'm
Google
going with
never
it.
lies. So anyway, it just really got me, and I loved this takeaway.
Yeah,
that was
cool.
my takeaway here is that there's a number of features in this film that were kind of... I guess, stereotypical in terms of the presentation. But that one there was just what I really liked. It tripped me up. It just said, hey, sorry, take a look at yourself. Why do you think that robots have gender? And given that they have a gender, why do you think that's a masculine one?
Yeah.
Because I described at the start, it does things like fight and so forth, but when I thought about it, nothing that it did was particularly masculine or feminine.
Yep.
It was operating like a piece of machinery. It's just that because it had a humanoid form, roughly speaking, I attributed to it human concepts. And it wasn't. And by the end of it, of course, it looks entirely different because she's got the skin
Yeah.
and skeletal change. So it looks like a Korean woman, except she's sitting out on an easy chair on the outside of the ship in space.
Yes.
Just being
Yeah.
a robot doesn't need to breathe.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a bit like the narrative construct of having a female protagonist in another story or a film who's like a tough, wild-going character. It's not what we've been trained to get to be used to in protagonists.
Well, see,
and I think it's the same here, isn't it? Like every film we've ever watched of a robot, there may not be a gender of the robot. Like I'm even thinking something like iRobot. There's no gender actually assigned to it, but the way that the robot goes about and does things, it's male.
Yes. And
so the presumption, then you see a robot in a film and you think, oh, yeah, it's a male robot.
It's interesting you say
even though
that
it doesn't
about-
matter, does it? Like there is no male robot.
You say that about the female protagonist. I think in Western films we've had enough now of the tough female lead
Yeah.
that I think that's a little bit cliched that
Yeah.
a woman in a Western film can either be a gung-ho soldier who's as tough and rough and tumble or more so than the men.
Yes. Oh,
or
definitely.
she has to be soft and gentle and feminine.
Yeah, we have gotten a lot of examples. You know, we've even looked at films, but I think it's that trained media eye that we get used to the woman being a particular character,
Yeah.
the male being a particular character, and so and films can challenge that. That's what they do, but we get trained into this. So that's the thing. It's the same here. We have seen robots. I mean, Star Wars has robots. Like robots, Metropolis was a robot, right? Like, but unless they have physical features that demonstrate, like Metropolis, it was a female robot, right?
Undeniably.
Yeah. So unless it's like physically, copying the human spectrum, and you can go, oh, that's a male robot, that's a female robot. This one was bionic.
It was, like skeletal,
Yeah.
so like a Terminator type thing, you know.
And I do think it was a nice surprise. The point you were saying, it was a nice surprise at the end, because the robot did talk about getting human skin and being frightened to put on human skin, and it was very subtle. And I was just thinking, a robot that wants skin, the Wizard of Oz kind of connection. But it's like, it wants a heart, it wants skin, it wants to look like a human. But again, I wasn't thinking, it's actually gendered in a particular way,
Yeah.
I don't think I had the thought whether it was going to be male or female, but you're having that kind of like realization. But I didn't, then at the end when it was its appearance as a human, or robot with skin, I was surprised at its final look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did shock me. I was like, oh, wow, that's a weird look. But then when I looked back on it, there is the scene where she is applying makeup with the little Dorothy, and they're doing it together.
Dorothy Kutnip, whatever her name was, called her lady.
Yeah.
And she went, oh, so glad you noticed.
Yes.
I picked up on that and I thought, did she say lady? Or was it, because I had the dubbing on for this one. Often I usually have the subtitles, but there's so many different languages in this film.
Yeah.
That I found it was confusing with the subtitles. In fact, the subtitles got it wrong that the woman at the start, it said speaking German.
Yeah.
But she was clearly speaking English.
Yeah, because I think
the subtitles kept saying in German, and then the words I'm going, it's not. She's speaking English. That's not German.
I think what's going on there is that's because Netflix player is doing the subtitles,
Yes.
instead of like a traditional, you go to the cinema and you watch a French film and it's like the subtitles have been done properly for the cinema release. It's or the DVD release, they do them officially. But I think Netflix, it's kind of like an auto caption because you can go French or you can go English, or you know what I mean? So there's always going to be some little mistakes.
So I ended up turning to dubbing, which was okay. At first it was a little bit kind of odd, but the voice acting was pretty good. And it was so the little kid says lady, and he's like, oh, I'm so glad you noticed. And I'm like, and that's sort of when I had suspicions leading up to, just with a couple of other bits like looking at the skin, and it was pictures of women on the magazine, but it was just kind of okay. That's.
But it is nice and subtle, like it's not.
When
obvious,
she said
is
that,
it?
that's when I first went, oh, I've just been I realised I hadn't consciously realised until then. I went, oh, I've just kind of thought of that robot as a man.
Yeah,
and so that's what I mean is like the Western films has reached the point where they can show female protagonists, and they've been building it up, and that's what I like about Ellen Ripley in the Aliens ones.
Yeah,
she's not she's tough and she's strong, but she's not like tougher and stronger than all the men.
Yeah.
She's still just a human.
A human, yeah.
She's not like, because that gets me is when they always. So in Game of Thrones, you got the Lady of Tarth.
Yes.
I mean, she's physically big, and so when in the movie show she's presented as being strong and powerful and so forth, it's believable because she's as big as the bloody Hound.
Yeah.
You know, at least in the, I don't know what the actress is like, but in the show she is. Whereas then you get like Keira Knightley or Mila Jovovich or someone like punching, you know, guys who are probably twice their mass. And if you ever had a child punch you, or you've pushed a child accidentally too hard and you realise that a 40-kilo child just falls over, they can't. No. That's what the sort of thing we're talking about. You know, you can't have a 120-kilo man fighting a 50-kilo woman. That 50-kilo woman's going to have weapons that are effective.
Yep.
Because punching and kicking is just not going to do jack. I don't care how good she is. Like, I would challenge that. And that's why we don't have boxing matches between a welterweight man, like a 60-kilo man, and Mike Tyson, a 120-kilo man, because it's going to be like... It's going to be really unfair.
Yes.
Like Tyson would
knock his head off.
Knock the guy's head off.
Yeah.
Straight outright.
Yeah.
But anyway, they do it very well in this.
They do. Yeah.
So that's why I think, yes, they're a little bit ahead. This movie was anyway.
Socially,
Socially, it was a little bit ahead because it didn't even make that as a real major part of the film. No one else cared.
Yep.
The robot cared.
Yep.
The child cared. Everyone else just called the robot Bud or Buddy or...
Yeah, I think it was Bud, wasn't it?
Something along those lines.
I did do it just as it was, so I didn't do the dub version. I just kind of did it and went with the subtitles and stuff.
So
I think it was Bud. But
so you just kind of... Or robot,
Yeah.
So it was just... so no one else actually cared.
No.
No one else tried to gender them. No one else paid any particular attention. The child did, because obviously I guess they're saying the child sort of picked up that the robot wanted to be gendered and was so pleased that, because I have a feeling that most robots don't have personalities.
Well, it's hard to know, isn't it, in this, because we don't, this film is so focused on that one core group.
So anyway, was this hope, warning, or an experiment?
This, to me, is the hope, because it is an enlightenment story of humanity, at the end of the day. So it's like humanity's gone down a dark path. We've really screwed up planet Earth. It's a pretty traditional kind of setup, this film, isn't it? From some of the science fiction. Demolition Man's probably a bit of a similar setup, where we have then a big corporation kind of controlling everything and promising a better future for the wealthy. Elysium, I think, is a bit of a similar premise by memory. People going up into the sky, and the rest of
us.
Metropolis, the same idea. They're up in the sky, aren't they? Just in skyscrapers instead of the sky. But yeah, I think where it comes into is the debate. And if you notice, the villain Sullivan, the CEO of the corporation, apart from his very first scene, every other scene that he is in, he is basically proving his point that humanity is doomed apart from the part he's going to keep. And humanity proves it should be doomed, right? So all of the people he runs into and murders and tortures and smithereens them away, into oblivion, he's constantly saying to them, see, this is the way humanity ends up, and his story of his childhood and all this kind of stuff. Like, everything he is reinforcing that side of the argument that, humans, we're going along right now, because we're doing it right now. We go along and we're slowly kind of killing ourselves in our environment, right? We're not looking after the planet. And he's someone that's come along in his generation and said, yeah, we're destroying this. So how about a few of us go off and start afresh and screw the rest of you, And no matter where I look, humans are greedy and they'll always choose greed over good. So, there's the scene with I called him the journalist guy. I didn't really know who he was, and he kind of questions him, and then he ends up saying to him, kill one of those,
Black foxes?
Black foxes, and then your family will come up to the Mars and come up to the sky and be looked after. And so he does, and he's like, ha, see, I told you, this is exactly what humans do.
Yeah. This is why I want to get away from you all.
Yeah, and then also with the lead, Tae-ho, you know, when it gets to that climax in the film, he offers him all the cash and is like, you know, take the cash and walk away. You know, and he does. Tae-ho does take all the cash. And so he's like, yep, told you. See, I'm right. You know, it doesn't even matter. Like, here's the Crusaders and we can just pay them off, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, so to me, why then it's hope is because you have these people coming together over the child of Dorothy, even though they're given money and everything, eventually they're choosing that right side. And then not only are they choosing the right side, but all of the other people are. And I think something in the film, like you said, the social themes, I think this film, and we get this maybe more out of countries like Korea and China. You know, you and I have watched a couple of Chinese science fictions. Go back, have a listen. Like the Wandering Earth and stuff. It was Wandering Earth, wasn't it?
Wandering Earth, Shanghai Fortress.
Yeah, those ones and even Snowpiercer, you get this real class divide, don't you, in these films? Like, they really take them to the extreme. In this film, Spacesweepers, we have such a poverty, working class, slave setup, and yet then they still choose the right path at the end, right? Like, they still choose to save humanity.
Yeah, right.
And
they all had enough time to, you know, book it.
They could have taken the money. They could have run away. Maybe they could have gone to the place in the, you know, and and maybe it would have been beneficial for a couple of billion people to die anyway. You know, even if Earth survived to kind of wipe out, it'd be less competition in their world. You know, so there is such a cool setup of socialism in this at the start of this film that, you know, like how they do all that work about collecting that piece of space junk and they end up owing they owed more than they left. I mean, he's literally, because he is, you know, he's got that personal quest of finding his daughter, but he's literally wearing socks with holes in them and he still then owes them more money, you know, like so it's kind of like, it's just such a setup of, you're in such a, you know, you're cornered a rat. It's the rat analogy, isn't it? But these rats end up choosing each other to survive, you know, when it'd be so much easier for them to go, no, screw you, like, I'm going to survive, you know?
Yeah.
So I think hope prevails.
And
Humanity prevails.
Here's an interesting question. Here's the connection with the Wizard of Oz. So we have this child named Dorothy.
Yes.
We have a Tin Man.
Yeah.
That wants the skin. You mentioned that before.
Yep.
And I was wondering about this when I was watching the film, the choice of Dorothy as being the code name for the girl's real name, which was Courtney or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
yeah. Kang Kotning.
I never saw the... so there you got the
If
Tin
you're
Man.
Korean, you can hit us up and let us know
You've
the
even got a
pronunciation.
guy called Tiger Park.
Tiger, yeah.
I like his name, Tiger Park.
Yeah.
Like it's a playground. But so like the lion...
Yeah, the lion, yeah.
So he wanted to have, bravery?
Yeah.
And yeah, he sort of needed bravery, didn't he? You know?
Yes, he did.
And what else have we had? Someone wanted a brain and someone wanted a heart. And then, so we got the straw man who wanted a brain.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Probably the captain, eh?
So the captain needs a brain?
Yeah.
Because she was a genius.
Yeah.
But she wasn't using her
She wasn't actually
smarts.
using her...
She was just...
Yeah.
She was just grumpy because she wanted to kill the dude, Sullivan.
Sullivan, yeah.
But, you know, didn't manage to do it and got all of her crew killed instead. Yeah, so and they're all trying to get to the Emerald City. Like, they're all trying to make the money which will somehow cure these things, but none of them will actually be helped by money.
No.
Maybe getting skin, but even then, it's still missing the essence.
The essence of it all, yeah.
Of being the human.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now you're just a tin man with skin on.
Yeah.
Which is not really, or a tin woman, I should say, in this case.
And
skin on. But by the end, having done something that is so heroically human, it's like she's earned the skin.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, like, even if this crew get to the Emerald City, what's the point? They're just another 4 people in, like, this whole society is still doomed eventually.
Yeah, none of them have slipped the bonds of their past.
No, they wouldn't really escape it, you know.
Tiger Park is still just an ex-con.
Yeah.
Tahoe is still just doing anything and everything he can to get to his daughter, which is sort of what he realizes got his daughter away from him in the first place. Yeah. Was that he was so focused on getting everything good to try and help his daughter that he ended up he's just ignoring her.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just liked that whole
definitely
Wizard of Oz sort of setup in this. I don't know if there are any munchkins in this. There were the nanobots.
The nanobots.
Oh my god!
What did you have a favourite scene then?
Favourite scene. I really did like the robot fighting on the ships.
Yeah, that was cool.
Around. It was very cool.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about something that's a little bit more sort of
it doesn't have to be. It's
interesting or personal, then I quite liked the little backstory scenes that we got. Just right towards the end, we sort of got these little backstories about Tahoe and so forth. Yeah. Just the way they incorporated them as backstories. Some of them were being told. Yep. They were being told by different people.
Yes.
And that was just really nice. But yeah, the one scene, that fight scene at the end where the hatch opens up and the ship they're on, which always kind of looked a bit like a pirate ship, didn't it?
It did.
The way it transformed. But then it opened up the back and it's got that little cage that she's in. It kind of looks at the back cabin of a pirate ship, and she's like shooting out the back with her gun.
Definitely.
And the robot's swinging around with a harpoon, jumping from ship to ship. Because we found out that Buddy was an air-to-air, anti-air robot, and I sort of thought meant a pilot or a ship. Yeah. But now I'm thinking maybe they've got robots that specialise in basically doing this exact thing, which is just launching themselves and being the weapon themselves to land on ships and rip them apart.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
I liked that. That was very... It was imaginative and creative, I think, having this robot swing around on a harpoon. It brought back the whole ship. I suppose you could even say some Moby Dick going on in here where they're all chasing Moby Dick. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but the harpoon kind of implies it, doesn't it?
It does. I think a favourite bit of sci-fi to me, just because you're talking about that robot, like the bit that gets me is that robot. Like I really liked that robot, and you're just sort of touching on there, like, was it something that was, it felt a bit kamikaze, if that's the right sort of thing to think of, but this idea of almost like a self-destructive weapon, you know, and being a robot.
Its eyes changed colour.
Yeah, it did.
It went from green,
very
and it was
mission.
nice, and when it was a bit focused, it would go blue, and then it was combat mode, it would go red.
Yeah. But and this is the thing, I liked that, you know, at the very start of the film, it seemed that the robot was obviously very talented, helping them, and they were working on victory to, you know, get this space junk, because then they'd trade it in at the recycling centre, basically. Great idea. Very, very reasonable, like, premise, I think. Like, very real. At some point, a lot of that space junk will be worth a lot of money. And I liked this idea of kind of like, a big group of different pirates basically hunting that piece of treasure. But with the robot, I liked that, you know, it was so mechanical. It had that purpose. It had that harpoon. But then when the team achieved their victory, they then were very, you know, old school, as in like, let's gamble the little bit of money that we've got. And that robot was the cleverest one, like saving it, which then we find out, well, she's saving it to get the skin, but she's like, oh no, I'm collating this. We're not a team really. Like, we're a team in that moment to get the scrap metal to make money, but then screw you, I'm getting out of here kind of thing. And that's why straight away, that's very early in the film. I was just thinking, wow, this robot is something that is quite a drastic different type of robot, you know, than what we've seen in a lot of other films.
It's like not a C-3PO, for example.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
not a Terminator, really.
It's not a Terminator, but it's got its own agenda. That's what I really liked, I guess, you know. And yeah, you can see the Wizard of Oz thing, that the Wizard of Oz, you know, it wants the heart, the Tin Man wants the heart or something, but it seems suddenly that this robot had a lot of substance going on, that it had its own agenda here. And, you know, then it was like when the police officer came on board, it's just sweeping and he kind of like knocks it and it deliberately plays dumb.
Well, see, that's why I got the impression that most robots don't have personalities.
No, that's right. Yeah. So it was interesting, wasn't it? And then also when she, you know, the captain, there's a moment there where they talk about orders, and then she's like, she gives the and it just his eyes turn on and glare, you know, and you're like, and she's like, that's an order, you know, that's following an order, and you're like, oh, okay, so the robot's like, it's dangerous, but it's got this like back catalogue of emotion. It was really complex, and that's what I liked about it, because you think, where's that science come from? You know, like where has that honestly come from to develop a robot to that stage?
It is interesting that we never got any more backstory out of robot.
Didn't.
Why did robots stop being an anti-aircraft weapon?
Yep.
And clearly gain, because if all of those breed of robots, if you like, that all that make and model of robot were like robot, why would any of them remain as
they
combat
wouldn't,
weapons?
would they? They would go off and want to live their own lives.
They'd all want to be doing whatever, like take up hobbies or pursue philosophical dreams or something.
Because they didn't have to eat, because that was a joke that it even made.
Yes.
Like it just said, I would get this ship if we starved to death. I inherit the ship, Okay, so what? Anything recent creatively sci-fi related that you've been up to, sorry?
Well, only dealing with the Sci-Fi Film Festival we're organising.
Yes, of course.
So we have a good lead on a location, an event. In fact, by the time this episode airs, we will probably know for sure.
Definitely in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, it's in sunny Mandurah in 2022 May.
Yep.
Go check out spacebrains.com.au/film festival, film-festival.
Or you can look up the festival directly on Film Freeway.
Film Freeway.
Yeah, we've already had a few submissions, which is exciting. We do have an early bird submission date, which is in a couple of months, August. So you've got a couple of months to get in. It's super cheap, and we have those multiple categories. We have a local Mandurah and regional WA category. We have an Australian category, and we have an international category. And then we do also have a student/youth category where you just need to be a student, either high school, university, college, that kind of situation.
Yes.
And we will, sorry, just saying we've got a fixed location that will be announced shortly. And also we kind of nutted out which is something we've been talking about for a long time, but actually talking about the day. So obviously we've got this idea of films being submitted and having a bit of a film festival competition, and they will be premiered and there'll be awards. But before that, we would also really like to celebrate science fiction.
Science fiction. We have a day lined up at probably, was it 4 to 6, depending on final organisation.
Yes.
Yep. Sort of workshops, roundtable discussion, podcasting.
Yep.
The whole lot, ranging from not just films, but we're looking at, well, as I said, podcasts. So that's interesting. Science fiction authors, like writing and filmmaking, and whatever else comes up, and a science, someone cleverer in science and explaining things than me. Which
that's crazy.
Yeah, how could you find someone like that?
I don't know.
It's just like, we found some dude down the Oval the other day who was telling me about chemtrails, and so I thought, he's important to have on that show.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some science on science fiction, and then we're going to have a bit of a discussion. It's going to be fantastic.
It will be exciting.
There'll be an after party, of course.
Yep.
And we're also looking at a launch party. So this is going to be fantastic.
It is very exciting stuff. Yeah, I can't wait to lock in a few more of those details, and then we'll be sharing more and more of them.
And what about yourself? Anything other than the film festival?
Well, I'm in pre-production for Harold the Plumber. The Magical Toilet Water. So, which comedy drama sort of idea. It's got a lot of moving parts. I probably didn't realise how many moving parts I put into the script until now, but things are progressing. The cast has been locked in, which is great, and it is a much bigger cast than The Memory, my last short film, which had 2 casts, or 3 technically, but pretty much just 2. This has about 10. So, I mean, Harold is 80% of the film, and then his friends are kind of maybe 40%, and then there's a few one-liners. But suddenly when you realise you've got all those one-liners, you're like, oh, hang on, I need a few people. So it didn't lack in people coming forward, actors reaching out. So that was exciting, and it was just about finding that right balance for the right character. Yesterday, it's not the funnest job in the world, but I sort of sat down and did a shooting schedule. So I don't mean like figuring out the shots, but actually just literally saying, okay, so sort of Saturday morning, if we spend 2 hours doing that thing with this actor, we'll get that done. And then, okay, then we need to move to this location and that will take half an hour. So kind of like that kind of schedule. And also thinking, well, this actor's in scene 4, 8, 16, 19, 20. But can I shoot that on the Sunday instead of the Saturday? But then this actor needs to be in scene 18 and scene 1. Okay, so that should be Sunday too, so that I've just got them around on one day. So it's just kind of like a bit of a juggle. Yeah.
I sort of know when I was doing my audio drama, I started the first season, I kept it right down to pretty much just me, one-man show, because I was feeling the waters, and I had a couple, like there was a voice recorded message that was going to be in it, and there was like a couple little one-liners, short bits right at the very end, a couple characters. And then I got my feet under me, so I included a couple more characters.
So bringing a whole cohort.
Yeah, so season 2 and 3 were like sort of full cast.
Yes.
Gone were the episodes that were entirely just me doing stuff.
Yep.
Organising then all the lines and making sure that I got them out and in, and then figuring out which parts I could do just by me, like, because there were still some like monologue type things. Yeah. So even then, but I had it a bit easier because it was only voice recordings. So they didn't have to have. They could do it remote.
Yeah.
So I can imagine trying to get this done in a local shoot. You can't just sort of have people just turning up your house for do 2 lines, go home, and then 3 weeks later come back and do another couple.
Oh, no. And I'm big on. I did it with the memory and on previous film shoots. Like I don't like things going on too long, because you're not talking about paying people here, and it's their time and effort. And of course they want to get something out of it as well. They want a finished product. They're wanting to be actors. So it's a mutual, it's reciprocal, but at the same time, I am very respectful that I'm not paying you, so I don't want you here for 10 hours.
Well, that's the thing. It's all fun and games. If someone says, I'm doing a short film, can you be here on the Sunday for like 3 to 4 hours?
Yeah, it's like, well, that's okay.
And they go, okay, that's a bit of a special thing. I'll organise around that and go along and do it. And then you can't sort of say, and I'm going to need you back here on the Wednesday evening and then on the next Saturday. And they're going, hang on, this is like a 10-minute film.
Yeah. How much?
Can you get your stuff in order?
Yes, that's right. And I've also been on a couple of sets, and I really learnt from these where, they at the start of the day, it was like, oh yeah, it's a 6-hour day, and everyone's like, great. So could you imagine going to work? You're like 6 hours, and again, no one's getting paid. Everyone's volunteering, and you get to about the 6 hour, and you realise that only half of what was planned for the day is shot. So then you're starting to think, if you're not the director, you're not in charge, you're starting to think, we've only done half of what was planned. It's already at 6 hours. Okay, so maybe another hour or so, and then you can see the director or the producers are wanting to push on, and they push on, and it's like another 2 hours. So now we're at work for 8 hours, 9 hours, and you're like, and then people start getting antsy and they want to go home, and the director's like, no, we're gonna, and you're like, and everyone's really polite about it, but you're going, and then it ends up being like a 12-hour shoot or something when you didn't know it was going to be that long, and you don't want to be the person that goes, that's it, I'm done, I've got to go home. But you also are thinking, really, this should be... You are
thinking, that's it, I'm done, I want to go home.
So therefore, it's a half-assed, everyone's putting in a bit of a half-assed and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I've learnt from that, and I just think that's really unfair. No one should really go to work and then, especially when you're not being paid, and then being expected to do these exorbitant hours all night long and stuff.
If I was Jennifer Lawrence and being paid...
You're getting paid $22 million.
And they sort of say, oh, we're going to go an extra hour, you sort of go... oh man, how much am I earning on this per hour? I'm earning.
No, but you know what? That's from what I gather at that top end, that they are unionized to the minute, you know, and they only have her on set for, you know, it might be the 8 hours. That's it. They legally can't have her on set for another minute.
Well, I got to say,
it's a funny thing.
If I was, I would write that in my contract too, because you wouldn't want them. Okay, you're paying me a whole bunch of money, but now you're just taking the piss.
Yeah,
you know, you're really kind of squeezing as much as you can, which you kind of think is fair enough. But I would have taken $1 million less to lock in. Yeah. A set number of hours. I'll save you $1 million and I'm just going to stop now.
Yeah, and I think it does come down, like, you know, I heard Margot Robbie, you know, with that last Quentin Tarantino, you know, she reached out to him saying, can I please be in your film? You know, like, and so you could imagine that situation, someone like Quentin Tarantino, if he's saying, oh, I need another hour, well, the actor's probably like, yeah, because we want to make the magic, you know, it's worth it. This is going to be worth it. But if you're just on a big commercial set where everyone's making big money, you're like, well, you didn't pay me for another hour. Yeah. You know, pay me for another hour and sure, you'll get another hour. But no, you're not abusing that, you know. So, but anyway, so we're not there yet, sorry. We're not at the multi-million-dollar contracts and all that yet. We're not even at
I'm lucky if I get a cup of coffee.
Yeah. No, everyone will get fed. The deal on my film is that everyone's getting fed, and that's something that even on the memory I made a big deal about. I spent a couple $100. Couldn't pay people, you know, you can't pay everyone $20. It's a waste of time, but you can feed people well. And that was something that I had coffee and tea and herbal tea and all this sort of stuff. And I'm going to do that again for this. Plus they get an IMDb credit. They do get a copy of the film. Hopefully this last time COVID ruined a launch party. I was going to do like a little launch premiere party with the cast and crew. Hopefully for this time we can actually have that, and because that's on a previous couple of films I've done that, and it's a really easy way of saying thank you. You know, come have a beer. Here's a copy of the film. Let's watch the film collectively. You know, have a few nibbles, kind of idea, and bring a partner. You know, bring your husband, wives, or whatever, and you know, let's just say a big thank you. You know, because that's a good note. So there's something in return, but. Yeah, I'm not paying them, but it's progressing really well. So it's just with that, doing that sort of shooting schedule is definitely not my total zone of genius. You know, it's not the creative field so much. It's literally logistics.
When you can afford to pay people, you can pay someone else.
Pay someone to do that bit.
Let's just say, come back and bring the schedule back to me. And then I'll
just bring the schedule to me. You tell me where I need to be for the creative bit. You know? But anyway, so it is progressing. It's got a June shoot day. So yeah, it's coming up. Okay, about a month away.
Let's get stuck into this film.
Yeah. So a bit of the overview of the cast, as we said, written and directed by Jo Sung-hee. He has also done a feature film with the actor Song Joong-ki, who played the lead in this Tae-ri. They did a werewolf film, I think, The Werewolf Boy, about 8 years ago. And Jo Sung-hee, he's written and directed 4 films. He said for this one, he actually started writing it about 10 years ago when he heard a bit about space junk. That was his initial kind of premise of this story, was the idea of space junk. Oh, okay, and the danger. And what happened just the other week, sorry? We had that Chinese satellite that they had no idea where it was going to land.
Yeah, they just left this big rocket to this... They say
somewhere near Australia it's going to land.
Their answer was, well, the ocean, there's about 70% ocean, so you've got a 70% chance it's just going to hit the water. Yeah. You know, yes, but there's a 30% chance it'll hit the Earth. And there's not many places left on the Earth where we would be happy to have a rocket hit. No. Yeah, there's a couple of big deserts and things, but everything else is either wildlife we don't want wiped out, and or people. Yes.
And from what I could gather, if this thing had hit you, you'd be,
It would have been big enough to be annoying.
Yes. Anyway, so, we have a bunch of actors. I don't know whether we should even try pronouncing them all. I don't know.
Let's give it a shot, but we're going to start off with a sincerest apologies to all of our Korean listeners.
Yes, Korean, and totally correct us. Get us on the line. Give us a call. Okay,
I'm going to start off with, how do you say this pronounced one? Richard Armitage. Yes.
He played Sullivan, the CEO. So we had Song Joong-ki, who played Tae-ho, kimtaeri, Captain Jang,
Jin.
Yeah, who played Tiger.
Ha-jin Yu.
Played Robot. Richard Armitage. Yi Rin Park played Dorothy, the little child. It was filmed in Seoul in South Korea, and I just want to touch on a little bit of a different point of view from the box office. This was a Netflix film from the start.
Yeah.
A little bit like what happened, we heard about I Am Mother, just being bought out. I think this was just more funded from Netflix from the very start. They did a worldwide kind of premiere to 80 countries across the Netflix platform. And within 2 weeks, 26 million viewers.
Nice.
Which is really great because I don't think you'd get 26 million views in cinema, the traditional sense. So, yeah, I think that's probably quite a good hit.
How much would that turn into in box office? I mean, if you're talking $10 tickets.
Yeah, well, 260 mil, eh?
That's 260, but I know that, I remember that's an average, but here in Australia, $10 tickets, my foot.
Yes.
It costs $1 billion for a family to go to the cinemas these days.
$1 billion.
And they wonder why people stay at Netflix.
Yeah, I know.
Stay with Netflix, okay.
But this is a really interesting thing. Like, I found that an interesting statistic because it wasn't about the money. But then this is the money to Netflix, right? It's like how many views. They want the Tiger King, the thing to get up to number one, and that's how they're rating stuff. So will they give Jo Sung-hee will they fund his next film? Do you know what I mean?
I think they should. I think it's a worthwhile film to fund.
Yes, I think so. It wasn't a big budget, this film, from what you could find out online. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a pretty healthy return for them. So let's get into the story. The year is 2092. Earth has become uninhabitable, and we have this corporation called UTS.
Yes, I kept thinking of UTI, but...
And because I was watching the film just with all the multiple languages, I really was not sure about UTS for quite some time. Like, I was writing on my notes as I write my notes down. I was like, is it IIS? Is it ISU? I just kept getting it wrong. It wasn't until about 3/4 through the film. So this UTS corporation has built this orbiting...
A flat Earth.
A flat Earth,
I had a little chuckle at that when it showed it, and it's just like, it's literally a flat Earth they put up there. So this big science fiction film had... a flat Earth.
It did. And those remain on Earth breathe their polluted air. We have this main protagonist, a young man, Kim Tae-ri. He arrives at this sort of depot place. He has a bit of banter with this trading guy about a body. I found it a little bit, and this woman who spoke English. Straight away, it was very jarring how they all spoke their own languages.
Yes.
And there was a translator not working or whatever. And he trades rice, which kind of, I suppose, made sense because the environment's so polluted. And he gets then to go a morgue, and they bring out a body. But the guy's saying to him, "No, this isn't her." So, something like that. And he opens
She looks like she's maybe 7 years old.
Yeah, yeah. And he opens the bag, and it's not who he's looking for. So then he catches it's kind of like a train, but not a train, but I don't know, it's a circular on a rod elevator, which is a cool idea, isn't it? This elevator to space. People have talked about this.
Space elevator.
Yeah.
Or an elevator to space.
People have talked about this as a real thing that might get built, right? Like, I've heard some...
It would be better than a rocket because you don't have to expend all your fuel all the time.
Yes.
Its downward trip, for example, could regenerate some of the power cost going up.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that.
You can use less, exciting, heavy acceleration to go up. You can use, more efficient means. The downside, of course, is the incredible strength of material you'd need to tether an orbiting platform.
Yes.
It's just...
Yeah.
We do have material strong enough, but we can't produce it enough. Like this... Your graphenes and your carbon nanotubes are strong enough, but we can't produce them in quantities that would be sufficient.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot.
Maybe one day. 3D printers might get there one day.
Oh, they're working on it because it's got so many applications. It's worth it.
So anyway, he rockets himself up on this elevator and he arrives aboard Victory. There's a worker bee in the fire of the engine, Tiger, long dreadies, covered in tattoos, kind of guy, tough looking guy. Yeah. There's an android called Bubs or Robot. So, I don't know.
Bubs, that's the one.
And Captain Jang. And yeah, Tiger, I found this a little bit hard to quite understand, but it was kind of like he was revving up the power of the engine extra.
I love that because this bit of space junk hits and all of the junkies go chasing for
Junks.
They all go chasing it and harpooning it and so forth. And then in comes Victory, just like it transforms a bit. Like you can see that it's a
transformer.
Of all of these junk collectors, it's kind of a step up from the others. Like it's faster, it transforms, and at this stage it looks like it's got a well-oiled crew who work well together.
Yeah.
And Tiger King, Tiger Park, he's down the engine room, and I love this because they said call for more power, need more power, and rather than just like, I don't know, flipping a switch or changing a couple of circuits over, he shoves this, he rams this cylinder thing in, and then he clunks it shut, and then he has to pump on this thing to like,
old-fashioned kind of pump.
It looks
idea.
like he's got to pump it to a certain rhythm in order to get it spinning up, and then he bangs it with the back of his hatchet or whatever it is, and then it goes clunk, and then all the power starts churning up. I just love the physicality of it. All of that could and should have been done by mechanization.
Yeah, of course.
But it gave that feeling of industrialization. I think it's this whole, human labor to achieve things.
Yes.
Like, had this all been an automated ship where you just press the button, it all happens, it wouldn't have given us this idea that they're really working and struggling to get this bit of junk.
Yeah.
Every part of it is hard.
Which is, again, like their lives, right? As the workers, like everything is kind of hard. You know,
it reminds you really of the Metropolis.
It does,
that weird clock light thing that he had to replace. It's just, it seems pointless. It's like, you've got this machine that could turn a light on, and you've got to line these arms.
Yeah.
Couldn't you have just, I don't know, maybe had two people do it?
Yeah.
Each just taking one arm.
No, we need this one person.
Or some sort of machine, but no.
And the same for Tiger, right? Like, couldn't he have someone else in there, like, pumping it?
Yeah, it's the human effort. It gives value to the output, I think is what it is.
But then there, with Tahoe, they kind of accelerate. He shows off his flying skills, and they get the space junk, right? They sort of steal it from all these other ones. And there's a real competitiveness between all these space sweepers. Like, they're all hunting for that piece of gold, so to speak, a bit of space junk. So they collect it and get away from the others. He takes out an antenna, which is important because then when they're taking this bit of junk in, he's kind of counting up the type of metals it was and what's the value. And actually this counting machine spits out all this cash.
Yeah, $580.
$580. So you're thinking, okay, well, I don't know what that is in inflation terms, but he seems pretty excited. At least they've made some money. And then it's like, oh, but you hit the antenna, $900. So we take that, and you also owe us a couple of $100. We'll take that out of your bank. Yeah,
you first pay your payments for your mortgage on your ship basically have restarted, so we've got to take that. That's $1,000.
Yes.
And you think, so they've made $580, but they had to pay $700 and something rather for the antenna, and like $1,000 something for something else. Yeah. Clearly $580 is a fair bit of money considering what you imagine these other costs must be. Yeah. But it's dwarfed by the penalties they've incurred. Yeah, and then he even gives him then envelopes, which is his taxes. He's like, you need to pay your taxes. On what? He hasn't earned anything.
They still pay. So it's setting up that society, isn't it?
A bit of a struggle. He says, why do you even show me the cash? That's which you got to ask you, why did you count that out until you finished?
I don't know. So there is then the scene that we mentioned before. They're then they're gambling with the robot Bubs and losing. They're all sort of losing, and Bubs is collecting that money, and there's a lot of trash talk, isn't it, between all of them, revealing a bit of hostility. So although they worked well as a team when they got the junk, they don't seem to be much of a team. It's sort of like they're all on their own. It feels a bit like they're all on their own.
Particularly then when Tiger says someone stole rice.
Yeah.
And then he accuses the captain. They have their stand-off, and then they all sort of have a bit of a fight.
They do.
And they're not happy. So they're not a cohesive unit.
They're not. So then they're kind of sent on another, or they pick up another floating broken car.
Well, that was a bit they fought over. This is what was strange, because they fought over this spaceshipy thing.
Yep.
But they handed in just like a
a component,
a pallet of junk.
Yeah.
And now they're going to go and rip this spaceship thing apart, I guess, for parts.
Yep.
To sell. And it's in that Tiger is like, is it Tiger? He pries off the top. I thought it was the Tahoe.
Yeah, it is Tahoe.
Tahoe pries off the top. They're all talking. They're talking about starving because they realise they've got no money, and that's when Bub says, I'll get the ship, I guess.
I'll get the ship, yeah.
Yeah, which is great. You owe a lot on it. But opens up the top, and there's all these like balloons in there, which they said were airbags or something.
Yeah, they did,
I'm not sure what that means, but hidden amongst that was a spacesuit. And there's like a little girl. And, of course, something that happens, little red sparkly bits come out. And they've recently been talking about the Lagrange point nanites.
Yes.
Nanobots, which were just, very hungry. They'll eat everything and they'll destroy everything. And they're indestructible.
Yep.
And, so there are a couple of little red bits flying out. And I thought, this is interesting. Is that like an infection that's going to start? Because I worried about infection. And then, no, there's a little girl. She comes out and they get her in to the space inside, and they quickly recognise her as being this wanted.
Sneeze.
As this wanted supposed weapon of massive destruction. And so there's a bit of a light-hearted bit, I suppose, where she goes to sneeze and they all panic and they all run off and lock themselves in their rooms. They jump down and cover their heads and whatever. Which you sort of think, if there's a hydrogen bomb in hell, you're covering your head and lying on the ground or going to your bedroom, it's not going to do jack.
It's not.
No, but so they go on and they start talking about what they're going to do.
And there is mention that of this terrorist group, Black Fox, that had tried to steal her or something. And so, you're right. They discuss this idea of, hang on, we could possibly sell it back to the Black Fox. And get money, finally get a good payout.
Yeah.
It's here that you have a few flashes, but from Tahoe, he sort of has a couple little happy memories with a little girl. You don't really get a lot of clarity in what's going on, but there is a flash here of a cutaway because he's looking at this Dorothy, this little girl, and I guess it's, triggering his mind about his own little girl. At that point, I wasn't sure if maybe it was his sister or something. There was going to be some sort of sad story.
Sister, because he was very young.
Because he seemed extremely young to me, so I wasn't too sure about that. The crew looking through her belongings find in Dorothy's bag a smartphone, like this little phone, and they realise there's a number, and I think it's Can Hyun or something like that. And it's just repeated over and over and over and over throughout the phone. And then also, because Dorothy's sort of wandered off, she starts to grow a plant.
Yeah, she goes out in the little red sparkles and things. Yeah. And little bits go over this tomato plant, which had earlier died. It dropped its last leaf.
Yes. But it started to kind of reform, started to grow some new growth.
Yeah, lovely. I wish you'd come around to my house and
me too.
A lemon tree. It doesn't like it here.
That's a shame. They realise they can sell it to the terrorists, so they call this number and they do this sort of distorted voice and they have this plan and they think it's the Black Fox group. And they negotiate. First, it was going to be 1 million. There's like $1.5 million, and then 2 million.
They really reveal themselves to be absolute amateurs.
Absolute amateurs,
For $1 million. For
$1 million.
No, we could do 2 million. Oh no, 1.5. We can give you a discount because, guys, you're just totally destroying.
Anyway, they're offered 2 million at this particular location, and so they head there. But we also then have a flash that the Sullivan, the CEO, has listened to that conversation. So we're sort of not revealed everything about it, but we see that he knows that they're meeting. Yeah, and then so Tiger sort of has then a very soft emotional moment with Dorothy. She's drawing in his cabin and he sort of starts to have, quite a nice conversation. And this is the beginning of, it's actually probably started when Tahoe had his flashback to his own daughter, but each character kind of, Dorothy brings out something out of them, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Like a side of them. So for Tiger, it's kind of, he becomes extremely gentle with her and playful, I think.
He gets very parental. And,
yeah.
Or big brother maybe. Or
Yeah. So, but he does. He's very soft and gentle about it all, and he becomes a big supporter of her very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Early on.
When all the commotion happened, Tiger had happened to ring the police. So while they're heading to this destination to swap her, suddenly they're boarded by the police, and this guy comes on, and I felt that was really sort of Nazi-styled police officer, wasn't it?
He had the grey uniform on.
He had the grey uniform, the hat, and he was very well-dressed suit, a bit old-fashioned style. He had the baton that was actually electrified. And it was you could tell that it was very tense amongst the crew members, as in, he was authority. Like, the police obviously have an authority.
And these guys are not UTS citizens, which is important here, because UTS citizens are scum, basically.
Yes, yeah.
They are not afforded any privilege.
No. But just as he's about to have it, it was interesting, wasn't it? Like, Captain kind of then called his bluff.
Well,
and
because Tahu tries bribing, like, just grabs money out of Bub's money box, which she's not so happy about, and chucks it in his hand and said, "Here, just take this, you've got to get off," because they only had 2 minutes or something to get off the ship and get to this meeting. And the officer doesn't seem particularly impressed.
He doesn't say no to the money, but
he said holding it, and that's when the captain calls his bluff, as it were, says, "Oh, did we record that? What just happened there?" And the officer suddenly starts looking uncertain.
Yeah.
And that's how you know he must be dodgy. And maybe that was her thing. It's just, if you say that and he doesn't look concerned, he goes, "Well, I certainly hope so. You just tried to bribe an officer."
Yeah.
But instead, he looks dodgy.
Yeah.
Then she would have gone, okay.
Yeah.
He's not on the up and up.
So he panic buys, basically.
Yeah, he sort of panics a little bit, and then they do this whole thing of basically threatening to reveal him to the other police, and he'll get in trouble. He's got an illegal weapon, and they basically give him a full dressing down, and he drops his brave and confident
authoritative figure
and becomes very scared very quickly,
and flees,
and he just basically hightails it.
Yeah.
Which is great, because it gives them the chance then to get down to this nightclub where they organise to meet and hand over Dorothy, who is in a sack, which is interesting, a little carrier bag with a little window, like a little pet carrier.
It was.
And they're all wearing masks, because apparently that's what you do in this nightclub. It's a masked ball. And they're going through there looking around to try and find out. And we see this fellow who's wearing a much sleeker, nicer mask. He's wearing some nice... somewhat uniform looking, but still, he's not a part of the party. So you immediately know he's the guy.
Yeah.
And then there's soldiers come in, and also they start looking. They're up on the balcony up above, and they're heavily armoured. They've got fancy electronic face plates.
They look robotic,
guns.
and they've got obviously special vision, and they're kind of chunked up a bit, aren't they?
They're searching, and you overhear them say, like, okay, we're trying to get a sight on,
Dorothy
and we've got to take them out when we can.
Yeah.
So you know that the soldier's going to attack.
Yep.
And the deal starts going down. Kang, the doctor, who is meeting them, has a briefcase, and they do the whole show us the money, show us the girl, show us the money. Okay, he shows them the money. And they go, oh shit, it's all there. And they're all like, holy crap. But then, of course, Kang opens up. Mr. Kang, Dr. Kang? Dr. Kang.
Dr. Kang.
So he didn't go to 9 years of doctor's school to be called Mr. And you open up the bag, and Dorothy's not there. And this surprises everyone, of course. And they all turn around, and we see Dorothy's wandering just through the crowd, and people aren't paying too much attention until suddenly someone does.
Yes.
And everyone stops, the music stops, and everyone steps back, and they all open up the little PDAs, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
And up comes a little news report about Dorothy is a weapon of mass destruction. Yeah. She'll destroy you all.
They all back away.
And then they go, oh, we've spotted Dorothy. And gunfire starts. And there's chaos. And everyone goes running everywhere. And they try and get Dorothy, and they back and forth. And they finally grab her. And then Tahoe is sort of caught with her.
Yes.
And then they're shooting, and the bullets just stop. They hit this barrier.
Yep.
And explode around it, and they shoot. They destroy this huge big chunk of the place.
Yeah.
But the good guys escape.
Yes. And Captain had sort of watched that and noticed that, there was some sort of shield happening during that, which I'm just thinking now is a bit of foreshadowing really towards the end, isn't it? Really, that she shields them at the end as well.
Yes. She's
hadn't thought about that until you just said it that way. Yeah. So they make it back to the ship. Dorothy gets back to drawing with the crayons and that. When they've asked what her real name is, she says it's Kotnim, I think. Is her Korean name. And Taho starts to sort of ignore her. She starts calling him Uncle.
Uncle, yeah.
And he's grumpy Uncle. She still believes he's robot. But then Tiger again is sort of, he's becoming more and more friendly and fatherly or big brotherly and starting to have a bit of a, soft spot for her more and more. And Taho dismisses that and then he wants to set up another call, to rearrange the exchange, the money. He's saying, think of the money, like we can go out there for money of this.
And they do their split, how they're going to split the money.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of them, you think 25% each?
Yes.
No, it was like 40% of you, 35% for me and 10 for you. And then Bubs says, what about me? Am I not part of the crew? Oh, okay. Comes down to 10 for you. And at no point did anyone just sort of say, how about an even split?
No. I don't think they were happy with, they weren't. And he ended up, Taho was like 4-3-2-1, like he'd get 100, right?
Yeah, you get 10% or something stupid.
We have a cut to then going back to Sullivan. He's with these board of directors. They're talking about Mars. They're talking about the TV ad voiceover and stuff like that. But with all this kind of commotion going on, he's not too happy. And this is the first glimpse we get that when he gets really grumpy, he starts to have these veins popping off his face. And
I love him. He says, I want to make it very clear that Mars is our only hope for survival.
Yeah. So it's that, but I loved the veins. The veins were popping off his face, and
See, there is no such thing as a good guy that gets veins like that.
No, there's
You'll
no
never see it,
way. His voice starts getting deep.
Even Bruce Banner turning to the Hulk, his skin goes green. It doesn't have these veins like that.
No, veins are never a good thing.
Evil guy veins.
Evil guy veins, yeah. And red, like there's redness to it, right? Like symbolically red is always bad in that way. Doesn't seem to hurt anyone, but all the board of directors kind of like start looking away in the other direction. Don't make eye contact. The guy that met the last guy, you can make a comedy out of it. The last guy that was looking at him got zapped by his veins or something.
Yes, Barrica's veins. So nobody even said, you should probably get that looked at. Yeah. You're 152.
No, they've seen this. They've seen this. They've seen the vein.
Yeah, I think they've seen this before, and they know that this means that he's getting serious. He's going to start pronouncing about how humans aren't worth saving.
Dorothy and Taho, they find the tomatoes on the plant that Dorothy's been growing. They're kind of looking better and better. And they have landed somewhere, haven't they? Sorry.
They're trying to repair the ship.
The repair ship, that's right.
Going.
It's kind of some sort of landing module.
And Bubs is complaining that it's always her money that gets taken as the emergency money. Remember that battery? And there's no money left. But they need welding rods.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dorothy and Tahu grab this tomato. Most of them are green.
Yeah.
Which would be gross.
Yes.
Sour as. But of course, these earthlings have not had fresh food.
No. If any real food, Yeah.
So he takes them down and someone picks up the green tomato and bites into it and it looks like it's just pure joy.
Yeah.
Which, I can only imagine what they normally eat.
Yes, yeah.
It would be like, synthesized algae that tastes like Wheaties or whatever. What is that?
So a green tomato would probably taste bloody nice,
because it's just something so different.
Yeah.
And he sells them for like $1 each, and they get $23, and there's a few tomatoes left over, and Dorothy tries one and says, "Oh, it's disgusting."
Yeah.
But Taho
and Tiger, they all have one,
Yeah, but he manages to buy the welding rods.
The welding rod, yeah. Captain Jang finds some papers in Dorothy's backpack and goes through them. And at the same time, that's where we get that great makeup scene sort of happening, which really in reflection now, again, it's one of those moments I'm thinking, all that stuff you talked about earlier. It's like, there's a connection there, isn't it?
And I love the way that the makeup kept going on and on
and on.
Yeah.
But isn't that a nice subtlety? Because like little girls, like I was just saying this even with my 4-year-old, like they do kind of get makeup and it's not the way women put on makeup. They want to like pile it on like paint and stuff, right? Or most women. And, but whereas kids can kind of like paint themselves in a way. And that's what this was feeling like. But when in reality, because when we do get Bubs later in the film, she does have really heavy makeup on.
Yes.
And so it's like a little, again, nice foreshadowing going on there, isn't it?
And
I hadn't thought of that way.
It makes a bit of sense. You imagine here's this robot
wanting
to
be a woman.
Like a human female.
Yeah.
And thinking, well, human females, I'll need makeup.
Yeah, yeah. And now she gets to kind of play with
makeup.
it. Yeah. So it was cool that. And then thinking back, reflecting on it now, I can really see like it's a nice foreshadowing. Yeah, she also then, this is where Bubs tells the story of Tahoe. So she tells her the story.
To Dorothy, yeah.
So, and we get this flashback. And the flashback is nice visually because it's done as like a really soft, white, illuminating light over the whole thing. So it has a nice filter over it. So it looks like a memory. He was a child soldier destroying everything. And he was the best and he was like a leader. And we have him coming aboard this ship where he's, they've shot up the people and there's a live baby, in its mum's dead arms. And he kind of has a moment, I suppose, of softness and takes the daughter. And in the story, Bubs says, because he had a bit of privilege at the time. So he's supposed to hand the babies back, but he sort of took it on and adopted. And I guess, this story's been told before. It's not something new, like a general in a war taking a child, adopting it back to the States or whatever.
He was the number one soldier, so he could do what he wanted.
Screw you, I'm going to take it.
So long as he performed, he could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah. And I think, because she does it, she rekindled his humanity. And Tahoe found himself unable to hurt others.
Because he was meant to be a ruthless child soldier. Yeah. And so at the age of 20, he was just not able to perform anymore. He was done, and so he got fired on the spot.
And it is actually CEO Sullivan that's there firing him.
Each one of these people, crew members, was directly affected by Mr. Sullivan.
Yep. And so being dismissed by the force, he's become homeless on the street, and he's reduced to being a non-citizen. After a year of being homeless with the child, he became really desperate and started to gamble as a way of he's holding on to his last few dollars, sleeping on the street with his daughter. And he starts neglecting Sunny, the daughter. And we have this real sad scene of him sort of which all parents, we all do it, don't we? Bugger off, get out of my face. I've really got to concentrate on something right now. I'm guilty of doing it. I'm sure you are too.
All the time.
And sometimes it's well and truly warranted, then other times.
It's always warranted. I keep my kids locked in a small cage.
Yeah. Okay. I need to take notes from you.
It's a very big cage. It's bigger than the cage I'm locked
in. Hopefully teaching them that one day they don't have to have their own cage.
Yeah, and if they could bring me with them, that would be great.
That would be good. So we don't have a culture where we look after our elderly, so no, you're going to be in the cold.
Oh no, we're changing there. We're changing. This is the generation that changes.
This is the generation that changes. Tahoe, he pushes her away and he's gambling. And there's this, she goes off with the kids to kind of buy a pretzel or something like that, or waffle or something. And the guy's like, you need money. And with that, there's like a crashing from above, right? So space junk.
Yeah.
Crashing down, Chinese rocket that they haven't accounted for, smashing through. And it just annihilates this section of the road that she's standing on.
It depressurizes, and there's just debris and everything gets sucked out. And all the doors around there get sealed shut. So Tahoe
is inside.
Looking around to try and find Sunny and goes up to the door and looks out and sees all these bodies and debris shooting off into space. Space junk.
Space junk, yeah.
As it were. And then he goes to the story continues, doesn't it? Where
he goes to the kind of
we do
the corporation. Yeah, he does. I just didn't write down. Yeah, he goes to the corporation kind of help desk. Oh, sure, yeah, we can help you, and that's the cost is a couple of $100,000.
And we're normally recovering 24,000. I'm thinking, that's pretty good.
Yeah, like we
and recovery will be covered. And there'd be normally $120,000.
Yeah.
UTS citizen.
you're a non-uterus.
Yeah, so we need
and
cash
like
only.
it said his bank was disqualified and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, cash needed.
Cash only.
And when he says no, then the queue of people as well, like, just push him out of the way, don't they?
You get out of the way, I need my moment of hope. And so he goes over and he's got this little bracelet which beeps. It's like a direction finder or something or other.
Yeah.
And when it finally stops beeping, she will have left
the orbit,
solar system, I assume is what they mean. Beyond recovery.
So it's his sad little story.
That's it. That is sad. And that's why he's so young and had this child.
And why his passion is to get money. He wants money so he can try to find her body. And
he's got a time limit on that too.
Yeah,
it's coming up close to that limit.
They get a phone call, and it's from the negotiators. So they kind of renegotiate a new meeting spot. It's a last-ditch effort, but we can do it. With that, while they've set that up, Tahoe and Tiger, I think, they're like, excited. And with that, a masked man has followed Cottonham to the toilet in the factory, and so they hear her scream, and they kind of like tie her, and Tiger comes, this is where he's sort of like a Superman, isn't he? And he's kind of like hunts this balaclava man down.
He runs up, checks Cottonham's gone, and goes chasing after the balaclava dude. Yeah. Who's kind of disappears momentarily, only to then have them face off.
Yeah.
There's
like a group of them.
Was there a separate scene in there? Sometimes that happens. They end up being faced off by who are clear. The people are clearly the people they traded with before. Yeah. It's just that they're all wearing masks, but it's just,
and they're kind of wearing high vis. They're just everyday workers, right? Like
they're
you
just
pretty
wearing
realize
normal stuff.
Yeah, and they have this fight where Tiger basically beats them all up, and like when he's about to clunk one, which might be lethal, they're like, no, we're not that bad. We're not the real bad guys. And it actually cuts then back to what I was talking about before, the Sullivan having this, I called him the journalist. I didn't really know who this guy was, but whoever he was, working for the UT. Anyway, because he's a guy questioning the whole setup, and, you keep forgetting about the millions of people, the billions of people on planet Earth, Anyway, and so the guards bring in front of them this Black Fox soldier or whatever, and the Black Fox we keep getting told at this point that they're a terrorist group. And he's lumped down, and you can't even see his face, and he's tied up. And Sullivan says to him, look, I know you keep talking about all those Earthlings, but we could bring your family up here. Your wife, your children, they'll be safe, they'll be breathing fresh air, bit of a deal with the devil. All you have to do is kill this man. And he's a terrorist.
How many movies is this situation brought in?
Yeah.
And there's usually a couple of ways this happens. One is it's much like what unfolds in this movie.
Yep.
Another one is they pull the trigger, but there's no bullets.
Yes.
Because they turn the gun on the person and try and pull it, and there's no bullets.
Yeah.
And I always thought, surely if someone hands you a gun and tells you to shoot someone, you check to see if there's bullets.
But always that example, isn't it? Because they pull the trigger and it's like, no bullets. But you would have killed them. Yeah. So it proves my point, right? And here there was a bullet, so he did.
Because he could have just checked, there is a bullet in there, I'm going to shoot Sullivan.
Yeah.
Bang, a couple times.
I'm sure his veins would have popped him out of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then that cuts to the leader of the Black Fox is actually these balaclava man, this man we know from earlier, the trader, the recycler, dealer. The junk dealer and stuff. And they explain that, well, no, they're not a terrorist group. They're actually an environmental group. They're Greenpeace.
They're environmentalists, and they found that this, Dr. Kang's daughter suffered a nerve problem.
Yeah, they tell the story of
congenital
Dorothy. Yeah,
nerve defect, and so Kang used an experimental nanobot injection, which cured her.
Yep.
But it also allowed they were communicative.
Yes.
So that they could keep operating within her body to keep her functioning.
Yeah.
But it turns out they could also communicate with other nanobots around her, where she could use them. And this was sort of the source then of this tree of life that was rejuvenating Mars.
Yes.
But that wasn't the only thing. She modified this tree, but that wasn't the only, like, there's no reason that this tree only works on Mars. Like, she made that tomato plant bloom, for example, as we know.
So it could work on Earth, and yet
Sullivan's choosing not to save Earth.
Yeah, he's choosing not to save Earth. And in fact, now he wants to destroy Dorothy. Like, that's the whole setup. And then we cut back to Sullivan, and he's with this guy who's just shot this black fox, which we now know they're just environmentalists. They're not as bad as what Sullivan is making them out. And because he shot him, he's like, and he bolts him to the wall. And we don't then see what he does, but he says that dilemma. He goes, you just proved the greed of humans and why you all need to be wiped out.
This is why I'm only taking the
good ones, the rich ones.
Yeah, it's just coincidental they're rich. You just think, really?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I suppose it would be easier to go through all the rich people and find good people.
Yeah.
But, you didn't bother going through any of the poor people at all. So
yes.
Yeah, it's that fallacy of, you hear it with jobs, and people complain about having, say, quotas for women or for minority races or whatever.
Yeah.
They go, but the best person should get the job. It shouldn't be a quota. You sort of like, well, no. How do you know you've got the best person if you're only interviewing men?
Yeah.
The whole point is now you're going to have to find the best person who's a woman.
Yeah.
Or who is, from this nationality or minority group. Mm. And it's this case here where he's sort of gone, yes, I've only picked up the best and the nicest, most noble people. Yes, they all happen to be rich. And my suspicion is that he only interviewed rich people. So why didn't, if he had a quota of it, there must be half of them from the poor people, then he would have had to have interviewed enough poor people to find the spaces. And out of the 4 billion or however many people left on the planet, you're telling me he couldn't find a few good people?
Yeah.
Really?
We know a few good people on this ship, don't we? Sorry.
Well, that's...
Well, they're a bit debatable at this point in time still.
At this point, yes.
So the UTI soldiers attack, and it's much easier to say for some reason, where they are, and they have this kind of big chase through the air vents. And they actually destroy a lot of those black fox. They just kind of like annihilate them, don't they?
Oh no, that's when they finally.
Oh, that's at the next bit. Yeah, sorry, that's the next scene. But yeah, they have this big chase through those air vents, and there's kind of like a near escape where Tahoe actually grabs Dorothy. He's got her on her back, and he like runs and jumps off, and Bubs grabs him and is like, "Why don't you just jump? That's really stupid." And they're kind of hanging on for their life, aren't they? And this robotic UTI soldier, UTS soldier, she's really like, she's like the head one. She's something, Barbara. Because she's got the glow in the eyes too, doesn't she?
She's got a bit of a shine to her.
Yeah, I don't know what her deal. And she seemed a bit.
She's definitely not totally human.
No, she seemed a bit super strength. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a near miss there. Like they only just get away from her. And actually, as soon as they get into space, what I liked about this moment in the film is like they've just escaped that, but then they've got these ships now firing on them. So it's a really cool science fiction action bit.
Okay, you've got away. Congratulations.
That's right.
No, you've got into space. Now you've got to be chased by rockets.
And I must admit, like this scene, and then later the way the spaceships. Did you feel it was a bit similar to Occupation Rainfall? There was a really cool kind of battle scene going on with the spaceships and stuff.
Yeah, it did have that dogfight sort of World War II dogfighting sort of feel to it. Yes.
Yeah, I think Occupation probably had it a bit like it went for longer and maybe a bit more detailed of a scene, but this had it as well. I could see some similarities anyway. They end up going sort of, they're being fired upon, and they sort of like stumble across a space debris field, which kind of has this like electronic fencing, and they all regret they've like entered it, haven't they? And it's too late, and it's a nanobot
point. They keep talking about, which that's the point of equal gravitational pull between bodies.
Right.
So you'll end up with a pool of debris there.
Yes.
If it is able to reach there, because if you're close enough to say Earth, you will try to fall towards Earth, and if you're going fast enough, you will miss Earth and you'll orbit.
Yep.
if you're closer to the moon, you'll orbit the moon until you fall into the moon.
Yeah.
But if you're at the right point between the Earth and the moon, where their gravitational fields are of equal strength, then you will have effectively no gravity, and you will not orbit. You will sit there in this point. So that's
what's going on with this.
That's what this is going here. I don't know if it's between the Earth and the moon, but it's the Lagrangian point is a point of equal gravitational pull between different bodies.
Yeah, but anyway, and here this is where all the nanobots are sort of stuck, and so they start like going all over the ship and eating everything, and
just it's like a rust, cancer,
starts
crunches all over
it, and they all hearing it, and they all give in. They give in to it because they're like, well, it's obviously just going to eat us alive, basically, or eat the ship alive, and but then with that, the Dorothy starts to control them, and they kind of sink, and so then they all just kind of gently float off,
leaving the ship intact.
So the crew do decide to unite Kotyim or Dorothy with her father and disable the bomb with the help of the Black Foxes. So they will locate the bomb and they'll take Dr. Kang to the meeting point, which they end up having at this factory. Kind of meet up is scheduled. When they arrive there, they kind of meet up. He gets to see his daughter. There's a happy moment. But then they realise that they're ambushed.
Yeah, so this was that turning point that you get in films where it's a happy point. You go, okay, they've come together as a team. Yep. They've decided to help Dorothy, and they've done this. And this usually, I suppose, this is kind of going to the Dark Night of the Soul, where you get a rush of death, where things are heading one direction, and you think it's done something, and then in burst the soldiers. And everyone sort of gets
annihilated,
and they say, kill everyone, keep the crew.
Yep.
And splat. In walks Sullivan with his big bag of money.
He's got $4 million, so he's doubled the money again, hasn't he?
Although that looked like more than $4 million he dropped, because they were $500 notes and stacks of them.
Oh,
One of those stacks.
Maybe you can't count Sullivan. He's so rich.
$500,000 like that. But anyway, it's a big,
huge pile of money. And the whole point there is to kind of, say to Tahoe that, hey, you've been doing this quest, drop it, take the money.
I think Sullivan enjoys rubbing it in people's faces like, you are a dirty little dog, aren't you?
That's right.
Here's your filthy money. It means nothing to me.
That's right.
But what you squabble over as you give up your morals and ethics of selling his girl off to certain death.
That's right. You'll sell her off to death, whereas...
Where's your nobility?
Yeah. You're proving my point, that's what I meant earlier, that all the scenes of him...
It's kind of entrapment, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what's he supposed to do? Refuse the money and get shot?
Yes.
And then he gets the girl anyway? Like, he wasn't exactly in a situation where there was any choice except to just kind of wait for the situation to resolve.
But it's a good like the whole film. So he started the film, he wants money. Yes. And we learn along that journey that actually he does have a bigger purpose for the money. It's not like he just wants the money to lie on the beach. He wants the money to try to reclaim his daughter's body. So he does have an actual, it's not quite a save the cat because of some of his behavior. Like it's admirable, and it's very it's very like, if I get money, I can do that, and then maybe after that, he doesn't even know what he's going to do. But then it's like, what are you willing to do? And in this case, sell a little girl off who will die to the bad guys. But then
you can recover your dead body.
Yeah. So it's like, so you're one-eyed, focused on your goal so much. And at this point, you're heading into that the third act. Will the protagonist still do what he's always done, which is, I want the money to find this body? Or will he have grown? And so it's a good scene, because he's going, no, I'm going to take the money. So he hasn't actually grown yet. So as an audience, we're like, oh come on, Tao, come on.
And the rest, and of course, Sullivan leaves and takes the girl, and the rest of the crew are like, okay, fine, what do we need to do to get her back? How do we chase them, get out of here, do something?
Yeah.
And, there's no particular plan, of course, because it's just like, well, whatever. And Tae-ri says, well, I'm off.
I've got the
He
money.
tries to convince him. He says, we've got this money now. Like, why do we have to struggle? Let's just get out of here.
Yeah.
And he goes off to recover, and he pops the money up on the bench, and there's $400,000 in there, and the woman's like, oh wow, okay, you've done it.
Yeah.
And he finds the
she kind of gives him a crate of belongings, doesn't she?
Here's the stuff, and he finds that the book and reads a little message. You want to be a good man or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's when he turns around and goes back.
Yes.
He goes back because. And as he does, he's realised the reason he wanted his daughter was because that was something that was bringing the goodness in him. That was what made life worthwhile.
Yep.
And here he is now turning his back on other people who also can do the same thing, make life worthwhile, give him purpose and community and love. And
which is, I suppose, a bit back to being a child soldier, right? Like when he was a child soldier, it was very one-eyed, destroy everything.
Look, I've got to say, when I was a child soldier, all I did was just chase after...
In space as well?
Chase after the bounty. I would drink the rum and I would...
collect your dividends.
No, that was a game I was playing. I wasn't a child soldier either.
We have Sullivan Goes Lives, and I know on Instagram that Richard Artemage has shared this image. He said, "Look at me, I'm massive on Mars." And so he appears, as a giant soul, not on Mars, on the flat Earth. All right, people, we're like godlike, right? Isn't it? He's like massive. He's
got a real god complex.
God complex, and he's like, "Oh, it's announcing the Mars program. Have a look. I've built a whole new planet. I am God,
Oh, and it pretty
just
much
to put the veins back."
It pretty much is, God with Noah's Ark and all the rest of it,
So then we have, so he's announced this, and everyone's like, oh, terrific, I love this idea of going back to Mars, because that means that they don't have to be in space with the space junk, right? Like, that's the whole point. They get to Mars, they can be more protected. I feel like that was the point. Bigger planet to grow and feel Earth.
Earth is nice, but it is limited in size.
So then there's this massive chase with the ships, and they work as a team. So massive big dogfight, etc. And they have to work at that to get beyond all the guards. We see that then the bomb has been armed in the factory, and Dorothy Cottenham is strapped to it on the chair. So the team free Cottenham, but Captain Jang discovers that the bomb cannot be defused.
It's too late. And there's a 5,000 kilometre radius that what did they call
nanobots have to be beyond.
This wave was Kryptonian wave or
something like that. They gave it a name, didn't they? Blast
slightly
range.
greasy solar photons or whatever.
And because she's got the nanobots, it will affect her.
Yes,
right?
It'll basically
wipe her.
Kill her.
Yeah.
Because she had this congenital thing that the nanobots is what is fueling her nervous system, basically.
Yeah. So they set off. They basically let's go the 5,000 Ks. We just have to. Let's just do that. The bomb will detonate here. Let's just get 5,000 kilometers away. But they're interrupted by Barbara. And you have one of these great kind of fight scenes, don't you, where it's like she's so much stronger and more powerful and smarter and all that than all of them, knocking them all out and kind of getting closer to Dorothy. And Tiger just basically locks himself in a cage with her, and it's a fight to the death.
It's a cage fight.
Yeah, it's a cage fight. And he's not doing very well with it all.
As you'd expect.
As you would expect.
She was kind of smashing that robot a bit. And so throwing him around a bit.
It was pretty easy. But he has a bit of a kind of sneaky plan, which is kind of
he pulls an
hooking
Alan
him.
Ripley.
Yeah, hooking himself onto the side of the spaceship. And, good old-fashioned airlock, and they're sucked out. But no, she's strong enough. She's holding on. And this is where the whole time he's been having this axe in his back pocket.
He mentioned thieves. If there was any of the thieves he caught, he'd chop off
their hand. So he, lifts that up and...
keep one of them and hand one of them back.
Yeah, knocks the hand off.
And Bub said, oh, well, I'd like a hand. You never asked me if I wanted a hand.
So, he rips off and she's ejected from the factory. So then they send out... They're kind of in this... we've got to get 5,000 Ks away. So they send out a message of this is the hope, yes. The film's been indicating hope to me anyway, but this is the bit that they send a message out to all those space sweepers that they were so competitive with at the start of the film and not friendly with. And again, I liked that, and I never said it earlier in the film, but it was great, wasn't it, that there was like Canadians and there was French and there was Chinese and the Russians and Japanese, I think, were there as well. So it was a kind of a really interesting how they were all a mix of races, you know.
Yeah.
And the film tried to do that, you know, throughout. So they do, and she gives a good old kind of Bill Pullman Independence Day sort of speech.
You could all run away, but you could stand and you could fight and you could... To me, I thought, well, hold on, I hope you've got a bit of a plan here, because what you're saying is you can either get 5,000 kilometres away, or, you know, you can stay here and you do a bit of fight to some end, not sure what. But it's revealed what that was all about, because this is one of those unreliable shots where we're not privy to all the information. We're only given some of the information,
which is clever
enough to give us an impression, because they jump in their ships and they fly off, and they're getting the support, so they're rocketing through. They're doing like a Millennium Falcon through the Death Star from Return of the Jedi. They are. And they're losing some of the drone fighters that's smashing against the walls and stuff. And then this French dude who has always had like this thing for the Captain Kim or Jane or whatever her name is. I can't remember what her name was now. Captain
Jang.
Jang. The actress's name is Kim. Yeah. Captain Jang. And then he peels off. And I was sort of a bit mystified, like what he's doing. Like, is he trying to... Because he doesn't lure any of them off with him or anything. No. So I was genuinely going, wow, what was that about? Was that just him being a lover boy trying to show off? Yeah. And then they fly off and, there's a chase and there's like rockets and there's...
drones being destroyed.
Yeah,
and...
like the space sweepers, they're using their weird harpoons and funny claw arms and it goes on and they go shooting off and they say, we reached 5,000 kilometres.
They're getting close to the 5,000.
The 5,000 kilometres, and they finally, like, the engine breaks down and they're just drifting at this point. Yeah. And they're all like sort of saying their goodbyes.
And then it's Sullivan.
Oh, yeah, Sullivan.
Comes up in his whatever freaking robotic
mech ship. It starts crawling over the surface here, and they have a bit of a fight with that, don't they?
Have a full-blown fight with him. There's...
He finally rips open the cargo bay doors.
Yeah.
And this is where we see they've got the hydrogen bomb in the ship.
And he's like, no, that's not my plan.
Oh, naughty.
Where's Dorothy?
And so they all say their goodbyes. I love you, and you guys are my only friends.
And it's where we get a cut back, don't we? We get flashback to their plan, which is, we will take the bomb for 5,000 Ks.
Yes.
And you take Dorothy in the opposite direction, basically, isn't it? Like, you keep her safe down this way.
Yeah, because how else are they going to save Earth?
Yeah.
Just taking Dorothy away. And this is why it was a bit confusing when they started doing this, because you're thinking,
what about Earth?
What's the incentive? Like, you're going to fight, this factory goes down. Why? Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit rough, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And I was actually, for a moment, thinking that this would be a real non-Western ending.
Yes, me too. I thought
they're going to have like this. They're in a ship called Victory, and they've defeated, but they've all sacrificed themselves totally.
Yeah. Because we were having these shots in these last moments before it did go off of like the rich people, because the rich people are realizing that Sullivan has tricked them. They've released some footage of that. And then the people on Earth are like, this thing's about to come down and wipe out a couple of billion people. And so it's all like you're seeing the sort of the aftermath that, if they blow up and they take out Sullivan, it's like they're going to be heroes, aren't they? They're sort of saving the day, but they're going to die themselves. I agree. Yeah, I thought there was going to be a bit of a non-Hollywood version.
I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that.
Yeah.
Because it was coming up and I thought, because I was going, actually, this is a Korean film. It's entirely possible that he's going to just have them all go down in a blaze of glory.
Yeah.
Snowpiercer was kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Like, Feature's Face fought all his way through to the end. And then... they all, what was his name? Who was it? It was
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans, but yes. They all died at the end. Yeah. And it was this junkie woman.
She's the one that survives,
with the child. Goes out into the cold and you're like, okay, that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So here I am primed thinking, okay, actually don't know what this ending is going to be. Like, if this was James Cameron, I'd go, they'll survive.
Yeah.
If it was James Cameron, one of them would have died, and they would have survived.
Yeah.
Or if it's Spielberg, they would have survived, but they would have been close.
Yes.
But this was some Korean director I have no history of.
Yeah.
Except for some Korean films, which like Train to Busan. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't actually seen that.
That's quite good, but I won't spoil the ending for you.
Yeah.
It's not complete death or anything, but it's not a Hollywood ending.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, you
here I am just thinking, okay, and so I was preparing myself thinking, how am I going to feel about this? Am I going to be like, oh, I really wanted to see, Bubs get her skin, or and I thought, actually no, it'd be kind of cool. I could respect it. I could respect this at this point. They've done well enough that they've all come full circle. They've all grown. Yeah. They've all learnt. They've all and sacrificing their lives like for everyone else like this is kind of cool.
Yeah,
but it's not to be.
Nope.
It got stolen from me, which I was actually also quite pleased with.
Yeah,
because it would have been a slightly darker tone to this film.
I think I agree with you. I wasn't sure where it was going to head in that way, but I think the tone being such a big blockbuster, such a big, like good guys coming, the hope coming, that then when they did blow up, I thought, oh, if they're dead, I think that's going to be a bit too severe for this story.
Yeah,
they kind of...
The tone was a little bit lighter than that.
It was a lot lighter and felt like they'd done all the right things. I think that's the thing. They'd done all the right things. It wasn't like they were sacrificing themselves. I wasn't prepared for them to be totally dead, I think.
They didn't need to sacrifice themselves to prove they'd done that.
Yeah.
Yes, okay,
yeah.
No, yeah.
And, then we sort of have the flash of red, and the fact is they've been protected. And as I said earlier, I didn't think until we were just talking about this earlier that she protected them in the nightclub, and that's what she does here. Dorothy does the same thing. So she surrounded them by the nanobots, so the bomb went off, but they were okay.
Yes.
And but Sullivan would have been ripped to
Sullivan
pieces.
Was not in a good place.
And then so in the aftermath of the battle, UTS apologizes for the cover-up of the true goals and promises to help make Earth more habitable. Cottonham is adopted by the crew. They're all getting a nice big feed for the first time.
And I like that UTS wasn't like just collapsed and destroyed and everything. Yeah. Like they just did what you'd expect a corporation to do, which is like, and I think to be honest, I think those board weren't entirely pleased with Sullivan.
Well, they wanted Sullivan, the voiceover,
but Sullivan was taking them to Mars.
Yeah.
And it's just that sort of thing. Well, he is being effective, and like they could fool themselves.
Yeah.
Until they heard the whole full plan, because they didn't really know the full plan. But it was nice then that they just sort of still took all the rich people to Mars.
Yeah.
That still happened. Because I think it would have been really unfair to the poor rich people, just because they were rich. Like, they themselves were just, fine people.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're perfectly good. There's no reason why they should suffer, but it's nice that UTS then just sort of apologized. We'll help to rehabilitate Earth.
Yeah.
We're still going to go ahead with the Mars project because that's too cool.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if I was on Earth and I heard that, I'd go, you got to do the Mars thing. That's just way cool. Plus, I want to go there one day.
That's right. And they adopt Kotyim, and she's using her powers for good. She's slowly. There's kind of a flash of her kind of like growing.
Yeah, every now and then she goes down the planet and grows a tree.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming these are those tree of life thingers which absorb toxic elements and put out heaps of oxygen or something. Funny.
Yeah. Tahoe is enabled to say goodbye to Sunny, so he gets a kind of an actual goodbye.
Oh, he gets a good one.
He has a nanobot. Style. Yeah, it's a virtual reality style, and it's a flashback to her writing in that book when he said goodbye to her. Him discovering the book, and the book said she'd written, "I want to be a good person like you." So it's kind of like connecting all those dots. Yeah. And Bubs gets her skin grant, and that's the really interesting thing that. Yeah, she's a woman.
Yes.
In lots of makeup.
But still has the same robot voice.
Still has the same robot voice.
Which is, well, you kind of had to do that so we knew who it was.
Yes.
But then, there's that little scene there where Bub says, "Oh, so which of these voices should I have?" Like this one. Some people say that I sound sexy. You're like, oh, don't choose that one, jeez. And Cottenham says, "Oh, I like the voice you've got."
Yeah.
Which is, again, kind of thing. And then, Bubs goes, "Oh, well, thanks. But I'm kind of sick of it." Which is, again, fair enough. It's like, it's not that Bubs feels that she has to change the voice. It's just that she doesn't want the voice anymore.
No, she doesn't want it. And Tahoe has got some nice new shoes, and he gets ready and gets the engine pumped. Tiger then does his old-fashioned priming, pumping that big puff.
Everything's looking a bit cleaner.
Everything's looking a bit fresher.
Nicer, the first time it was all like red glows and it was...
Yeah.
But now you can see it's the ship's had a big clean-up and it's all been fitted out. But they're still space sweepers.
They are. And they go hunting a big, chunky old spacecraft, don't they? Comes flying past at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
A big golden treasure for them to... Although you'd sort of think, surely someone could give them a reward, but like they just spend the whole reward on their
Well, maybe they got a reward and they had dinner and they,
okay.
Yeah, that was the whole point. So what about the ladder, Surrey? Where you're putting it? So we do a ladder on every episode, just more ranking the films in order of the way that we believe you should watch science fiction. If you have a look at all the episodes we've done now, this is episode 57. So we've looked at 57 films. Some are deemed classics, so they kind of get their own special order. But this regular one is about looking at all the other films that we've looked at in between. There's a lot now. Our ladder is growing. And where do you put Space Sweepers on yours? Sorry,
I like to put it down at number 37. So this one here would either come just after watching Alligator.
Yep.
As you can imagine yourself, you watch Alligator and then you're watching this, or just after watching The Wandering Earth. Because it has a similar colour scheme and look to The Wandering Earth, but there's this contrast. The Wandering Earth is very strongly about having this hope and pulling together, working in unison.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole thing, even the whole Wandering Earth project itself is about working in unison.
Yes.
But this one here, you could easily sort of be fooled and think it's similar, but it's not. It's about this a family unit developing and overcoming these apparent problems to unify to help everyone else. Like that's sort of giving yourself for other people, whereas the Wandering Earth is more about coming together as a single force.
Yes.
I think that's the way. So one way or the other, either you're heading in one direction, so you watch the Wandering Earth and then you see this one, or you're coming the other way, you watch Alligator, and so you've got some 1980s good stuff. And Alligator was really good for all of that imagery it used and some of the language of the way it told us about things.
Yes.
And then you hit Space Sweepers, which is a bit more of a Hollywood blockbuster style.
Yeah.
And The Wandering Earth, I think that'd be nice sort of... you'd be getting a nice taste in your mouth at that point, I think.
For me, it came in a bit higher on my sort of ladder. I've put it after Other Life, which was the one in Perth, in the future of the chips in the brain and stuff, and before Brother from the Other Planet. I guess I looked at this. I really enjoyed the journey that these guys went on, and I also thought it was a real kind of you're saying family. Yeah, it felt like a real connection to them. I liked the villain. I liked the science behind this one with the robot, and even just this whole social society that they set up. I really did like it, and I also thought that the kind of the dog fights did remind me of Occupation Rainfall, and I thought they were done really well. I thought the robot was excellent. The robot was excellent on two fronts. The fighting that the robot did and that harpooning stuff was really cool. But then also the fact that it had such a deeper agenda to it. I just really enjoyed that. Like as I said earlier, I haven't seen robots do that. And it felt, it felt really clever. And it felt very science fiction-y to me again.
One of the things I was just thinking about this robot is it wasn't the smart ass robot.
Yeah,
it was
that's right.
a little bit sort of mouthy, but but didn't have that usual, like usually this robot character either has a very comedic role, like a lot of the, robot troopers in Star Wars that are kind of bumbling, or it has like a real sort of acid tongue, sort of sarcastic thing. Yeah. And this had a little bit of that, but it was a bit more human. Like I said, you don't see this type of robot much in science fiction or at all.
But I think for me on my ladder, I think it goes well. They get something. It's interesting, isn't it? For you, it's after Alligator. For me, Brother of the Planet, like coming in from something that's a little bit more kooky, a little bit more eccentric, getting your head around, but really enjoying that experience of watching Brother from Another Planet. And then kind of coming to this, which is much more the big open blockbuster dogfights. Will they win the day? Will they not win the day? Hope for humanity. A really great bad guy, but it's still got a bit of it's still got enough substance. This film, and the more that, like, when we just went over it, then I'm realizing that there was some very clever foreshadowing going on. It does also have this weird connection to the Wizard of Oz, like a real nod to the Wizard of Oz. You've mentioned Metropolis. I think, Metropolis is actually heavy in this film.
Moby Dick. I've never watched or read Moby Dick, so I don't really know. But just this, because that's all about chasing the Holy Grail, isn't it? The white whale, the obsession, which is what Tahoe has. Yes. And then we even got harpooning scenes. And
so there is a connection there, I think.
And the white whale's out in the ocean. Ahab's chasing it, and in this one, Tahoe's daughter is out in this ocean of space. And chasing, will never find her.
He'll never find her. And I mean, I think the other thing is, like, you and I have touched on some scenes in this film that, on one side, they could be the cliche, but then this film doesn't make them the cliche. No. And so to me, that's what kind of like pulls it up a little bit higher on my ladder. But then, to go from that to, if you watch it on my ladder, going from the brother from Another Planet to Space Sweepers, big blockbuster, then to Other Life, which is more, in the mind and breaking reality. I think that would be a nice little trilogy of films there.
And Ben C. Lucas could, write a film in the past year or coming up and enter it in the film festival.
He definitely could.
He'd be able to compete in the Western Australian,
well, so could
Australian titles.
And Jo Sung-hee could enter the International Feature Film Competition, couldn't he?
Could get the International Feature.
This came out in 2021. He could enter it.
Joe, enter it. We'll screen it.
Yep, we will have a look at it.
Get the rights
if it's selected.
if we're allowed to screen it.
Yeah. So, Surrey, what about the science of space sweepers?
Science of space sweepers. Need I say anything more than nanobots? Everyone loves nanobots.
I love nanobots.
They appear in a lot of science fiction. The funny thing is we have two different concepts or two different technologies which both tend to get mixed together. So microbots and nanobots.
Yep.
And they're used, I think they were referred to as nanobots in this, but in reality they were microbots.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. And the reason I say they were microbots and not nanobots is because you could see these microbots. There's little red glows, little dots every now and then. You can see them drifting about the place. And that's because a microbot is anything, a machine that is smaller than 1 millimeter.
Right.
So we're talking about something the size of a grain of salt or down to like a human hair width type of thing.
Yep.
Whereas the nano is down molecular level. So the technology involved in nano machines is also not the technology we're thinking of, because we're thinking of like little mechanical computer doodads, right, doing stuff. But down at the nanoscale, you don't have enough material to do that with. You can't build arms and legs and stick a chassis on it and all of that sort of goodness. So you're talking about, really what you're talking about there is really smart molecules or collections of molecules,
right?
Sometimes embedded inside bacteria, because you got these problems with tiny little machines. There's movement and power. So if we were to assume that they can get power, because you could use electromagnetic fields, and some of these existing experiments that use today, they basically bathe them in laser or oscillating magnetic fields and so forth to give them some sort of power.
Mm-hmm.
But movement at the micro and nano scale doesn't work like it does at the macro scale. Mm-hmm. So when we build a robot, even a very small one like the size of an ant, it's under the effect of gravity, and so can get friction on the ground and walk.
Yeah.
And you can make little actuators that will do that. When you're down to the point of, down to nano, the interference with air molecules is greater than the effect of gravity.
Right.
So you have this problem that they're basically, you can't put a nano machine on a surface and have it walk around on the surface without having some sort of chemical adhesion.
Yes.
There.
Yeah,
It'll get hit by a stray passing air molecule, and it'll be blown away and it'll float around like dust.
Yes.
Which is not very helpful. So they're usually done in a liquid medium because liquid is a little bit more controllable. It doesn't just expand to fill the available space like gases do.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about little very smart molecules. You could even refer to some of these COVID vaccines, these mRNA vaccines, which go in and program your cells to defend against the spike proteins. They're kind of nano machines.
Yeah, right.
Where you draw the line maybe is that a nano machine would be something that is multi-component, operating in function for some sort of purpose.
Yeah.
Rather than just a drug, which is just like a single item. And so sometimes they talk about retrovirus being having cellular machinery, which is, it has like a gripper, it's got a delivery device, and then it has a payload.
Yep.
And so that's kind of like a little machine. So viruses are kind of these nano machines. But what we're talking in this film is micro machines, little millimeter sized or slightly smaller.
Yeah.
Still small enough that you can inject them into people. Small enough that, but big enough that they can be made of circuitry and components and have, wireless communication. So when you're down the nanoscale, at the molecules, you can't have any intelligence in that. There's not enough. It's sort of, the intelligence is more chemical intelligence.
Yeah.
At the micro scale, IBM has just announced their development of 2 nanometer scale CPU chips.
Right.
Which means they've got transistors down to the equivalent of 2 nanometers. Although it's not true 2 nanometer technology in that.
Yeah.
But anyway, the equivalence transistors in the 2 nanometers scale. So you could imagine that if you've got a nano machine, you could have like 1 transistor. That won't do anything. Yes. But at the micro scale, you could have thousands of transistors. And that's probably more powerful than what we sent people to the moon with,
Yeah, right.
Which is mostly humans with slide rulers anyway. But so down at that tiny little scale, you could have actual electronics. And we haven't got to there yet because, this power delivery, how do we power these things? You can't put little batteries in them. They're working on various power things. But what I want to really talk about is this experimental robot swarm done, oh my goodness, Harvard University, I believe. Let me just get my notes for this. Because I want to be able to get names and places right. They deserve a lot of credit.
Definitely.
1,000. It's called the Kilo Swarm because it's got 1,024. So these little critters are little robots the size of a 1-cent coin.
Yeah, right.
If you like. So they're not micro, but they're very small.
Yeah.
Like realistically, you look at a 1-cent coin, it's maybe 1.5 centimeters across.
Yeah.
2 centimeters. Not
tiny.
2 centimeters. It's little. And obviously you can't go too little or it just gets very difficult. So the idea there is they have this big swarm and they communicate wirelessly. So they do have Wi-Fi. They don't individually have much intelligence, but they do have some basic algorithms which allow them to operate in conjunction with one another, in cooperation, to exhibit apparent intelligence. And the idea is that they can maneuver themselves around to form different shapes. That's what the challenge here that they wanted to do. So they would have a shape like a wrench. Yeah, right. And it'd just be a black wrench shape on a white background. And they can essentially show it to what they're calling a seed robot. Mm-hmm. And they put the seed robot down and it becomes the reference point for all the others. Right. So all the others sort of go, how far away am I from this one, and what is my pixel position, essentially, within this shape. And once they figure that out, they just then start using this movement algorithm where they start walking around each other, keeping in close contact until they sort of morph and
create a shape.
Create this shape.
Yeah, right.
And so it's a really great proof of concept, and it's a great video to watch, so you should have a look at it. It was Harvard University. By Radhika Nagpal, and I apologise for saying that terribly, Mike Rubenstein, and Alex Corneo.
Oh, those trio. Always up to trouble
Yeah,
with the little microbots.
But hey, so here's the exciting thing with this technology that they've done here. The exciting point is, imagine this instead of being these, because they're quite primitive. They're doing a proof of concept. But could you imagine a little package, like a little robot that was made out of a blob of metal with some power and the smarts in it to move around like they do it here. And so you give it a 3D shape instead of a 2D one.
Yeah.
And again, they move over each other. When they get in a position, they discharge their little power, instantly melting themselves onto each other. And so they start forming a three-dimensional solid metallic shape. So you could basically deliver these things up into space.
Yeah.
And they could be magnetic or something, or be in a magnet, whatever that is.
Yep.
You deliver up into space and essentially 3D print stuff as required.
Yeah, right.
Through programming. And they could do it very smart. So you could just keep delivering stuff into the swarm, and it will just keep building out your structure.
Yeah,
the more you keep delivering, the more they just keep building the structure.
Wow.
And yeah, I was thinking about that. That would be quite amazing. Of course, a couple of problems that we'd have to overcome there, but we're not talking about the sub-millimetre at that point. We're still talking about maybe a centimetre, sort of little blobs.
Yes.
But you can see, though, the advantages would be that you don't have to come up with a single large factory in space or pre-constructed stuff. You could deliver this, cloud and then make it work. The other idea, then going further into speculation here, is this idea of them being able to absorb or catch on other pieces of surrounding material.
Yes. Yeah.
And incorporate it.
Yep.
So that you can just dump them onto a pile of dust or sand or metal filings or whatever it is. And start constructing. So you leave them up there, and after a while they just... On the moon, you chuck them on the moon, and after a while, they just have constructed a habitat.
Yes.
And they've sealed it.
Yeah.
And then, maybe that takes a little while, but they can do it unsupervised because they've got this swarm intelligence.
Yes.
Which allows them to operate together.
Yeah.
And I think in this movie, this is what they were talking about with the Lagrangian microbots were sort of deconstructors.
Yes.
Like, so trash would go there, and these things would just mulch it up.
Yeah.
And stop it from being big piles of trash. It would be small piles of trash. You can't delete that, but you would certainly stop enormous big heavy things from falling into orbits that would damage. But so that's my thought, is just these swarming little robots.
It's really interesting.
We're not as far off as necessary. Maybe 10, 20 years we might start seeing something along those lines. I've seen a couple other videos of larger sized robots working in tandem together, so they work together to solve problems using fairly basic algorithms and communicating with each other. Using the sort of artificial intelligence approach.
I suppose, especially when you talk about outer space, having something that's little and light, anything that's light that you can shoot up into space, right? Because that's what it's all. That's a big problem with space, is getting heavy stuff off planet Earth into space, because we need stuff out there, infrastructure, really to succeed and go that next step. But it costs so much fuel load to get big things off the planet, doesn't it?
And if you damage it on the way down, but if you've got tiny little things like the size of little
you could just send them up in little rockets, and they're out in space, and then they could start working.
If a few thousand of them broke, it wouldn't matter.
Would it really matter? No.
It'd be hard for them to break anyway.
Yeah.
And you could just keep delivering them.
That's right. Yeah. It'd be smaller payloads, but maybe just as more effective in space, as you said, building a habitat or something.
Yeah. So there's a lot of research going into this, because the flexibility it offers. So like that idea, 3D printing is really terrible. Everyone's trying to 3D print everything. I saw this, keep seeing this one. It's a 3D printed house. It's called concrete tilt panel. We already do it.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's called concrete. You just pour it. It's not 3D printing, really.
No.
I mean, we do it better anyway. So, but the 3D printing food.
Yes.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I've seen that with chocolate. So it'll 3D print different shapes in chocolate, but with different flavors of chocolate.
Yeah.
And so on. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. All right. Well, that was a good take on the science of space sweepers. So next episode, we're going to stick to something super fresh, Love and Monsters.
This got my pal Dan Ewing in it.
Yep. Your good old buddy.
Good buddy of mine.
He has spoken through Spacebrains at Instagram before.
Yeah, he got because he's in the occupation.
Yes, he is.
So he was quite pleased to hear us big him up on that.
So we'll be tagging him again. And he'll be like, "Oh, those boys."
Go on, Danny.
Yep. Maybe we can get him. Maybe we can get Danny over for the festival.
Hey, look, he's Australian. We're Australian. Yeah. Show us some love, mate.
There's not a lot going on. You can't leave the country at the moment, so come to Mandurah, Danny, and Luke could come. They could all come and have a little chat with us at our festival. So yeah, we'll have a look at Love and Monsters. It was shot in Queensland, I think about a year ago or so, and released just recently on Netflix a couple of months ago. It's got a real tongue-in-cheek. It's quite different to what we looked at tonight. And obviously a very different, complex society that's set up in that. But I won't say any more, but exciting to get into that. So that will do us for Space Sweepers. Check out our website. Make sure you check out the details of the film festival and get cracking. Make a science fiction film for us.
Or if you know someone who makes science fiction films.
Yeah, head them this way.
Tell them to get that way. Or if you're an actor who wants to be in a science fiction film, get your buddies together, get it going.
Get a camera, use your phone.
Your phone's an HD camera right there. That's better than what most camera operators had, years ago.
Just 10 years ago, yeah. So, yeah, make a sci-fi film, submit it. We look forward to looking at them. Or come to the festival, come to Mandurah, check it out.
It's going to be a great day.
It's going to be a good day. And apart from that, hit up our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Has now been added.
New TikTok.
We want the younger audience to get onto the Spacebrains fans, so let people know. You can hit us up on TikTok. And yeah, let us know what you thought about Space Sweepers yourself and what we talked about tonight. I will catch you next time, Surrey.
See ya.
Bye.